Hey guys, Technicalism here. So I kind of did go a bit silent recently. I was working on that beginner tutorial series and I might pick it back up. I had covered most of what I was wanting to say. There are a few reasons why things have gone quiet, um, but what I'd like to do is instead put that at the end of the video because obviously most of you clicked on to see this 5/4 time signature dubstep beat I made. So I'm going to be showing that first, and I'll be turning off my mic audio so you can, just hear it in its fullness without any kind of breathing or anything else going over it. I will just quickly say the one thing I will say, and I'll explain later, is my videos are going to have to stay in a bit of an amateurish style where there isn't really any editing for now, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't really been uploading recently. I'll get more into that at the end of the video. So yeah, that's why you're going to literally see me in OBS and all that, like I'm not going to cut this out. And as well as that, I also just wanted to say that some parts of this aren't going to sound like 5/4, and I will explain that afterwards, because I'm not just showing you this as in just letting you listen to it, I'm also going to talk a little bit about it, so don't worry about that. Anyway, I guess the last thing I will say is that when I say this is a track, this is not like a fully finished thing. It's something I did for fun, so I mainly just did the sound design and kind of the chords and the notes and all that. I didn't bother too much with mastering. I mean, if it sounded absolutely terrible, I'd fix it, but like I haven't bothered adding sidechaining and all that or making the drums super good. So it is going to sound a little bit amateur because, again, it's something I just did for fun. But still, I definitely think there's parts of it you could like. So I'm going to mute myself now and I'll talk more about it later, and I'll let you listen to it. So there you go. Now, because I'm going to have desktop audio at the same time as my voice, I'm going to adjust those a little bit. So okay, that's the track, and so I think the first thing you should go over is why some of this doesn't sound like 5/4. Although hopefully you will be able to tell that the track as a whole is 5/4, and it's because these chords are written as if they are in 5/4 when they aren't. Sorry, as if they're in 4/4 when they're in 5/4. What I mean by that is that, so like we call it 4/4 because the idea is that there are 4 beats in a bar, and the beat is kind of the average length of a note. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be, but the idea is that on average, the length of the notes you're playing is going to be a beat. And that's why, like, I mean, it technically doesn't really matter, but that's why we have 3/4 and 6/8, even though they're both the same thing. The idea with 6/8 is that it means that you're more likely having kind of smaller sections of beats, if I remember right. So yeah, that's why it's kind of done that way. So yeah, so this is kind of a little bit cheaty, but I kind of ended up having to do it this way. So the reason why it sounds like 4/4 is because, of course, 4/4 would be you doing like the rhythm that's going on here is I have half of an entire bar here, and then a quarter of a bar here after a quarter of a rest. So a quarter plus a half is obviously equal to a whole bar. So this is the kind of rhythm we've got here. Is this 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or technically 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, but like, you know, the last beat of that is a rest, where there's nothing there. But basically, the reason why we can do so that sounds like 4/4 because technically there are 4 sections, quote unquote, here. We can divide it down into less, but I haven't here to make it sound more like it's 4/4. Now the reason this works is because, as you can see, I don't remember the actual real musical term for it, but FL Studio calls them steps, these divisions of beats. So each quarter of a beat here is a step, these little tiny bits in the grid, and basically, in 4/4 you have 16 steps because there are 4 beats which all have 4 in them. So, you know, 16 steps because 4 times 4. In 5/4 you have 20, but 20 is still divisible by 4. So yeah, this would basically just be like if I removed one of these and made it into 4/4, I could just make this 1 step shorter and this 2 steps shorter, and then move them back a bit, and it would sound the exact same. So yeah, that's kind of, well, actually it'd be a little bit different because of the tempo and all. Actually no, it would sound the exact same. yeah, the exact same. So yeah, so why have I even bothered making something in 5/4 if the chords don't even sound like they're 5/4? At first I was kind of thinking that because this started out as something in 5 that was clearly in 5/4. Like it clearly sounded like a different time signature, but it didn't sound right to me. And I wasn't aiming to have it sound like in 4/4 at first, but I had this tune in my head, and this wasn't exactly it, but this was very close to it. And I was like, I want it to sound like this. And then the more I kept trying every single different combination of rhythms, the more I realised, oh wait, this is basically 4/4. And this is the only thing that sounds right to me now. So that's why I kind of ended up doing this way anyway. And at first I was a little bit, well, what's the point of doing it in 5/4? But then I realised that actually the important part about doing it in 5/4 is the percussive stuff, and this isn't the percussive stuff. Because of course, although you can have rhythm in your chords and your melodies, the rhythm is mostly to do with your basses and with your drums. So the chords and the melodies here are all written as if they're in 4/4, even though they technically aren't. And the basses and the drums is where it gets to 5/4. You can definitely hear that this drum beat sounds a little bit off if you were trying to imagine it as a 4/4 drum beat. It snaps a little bit too quickly from this closed hat to the snare for your brain to say that's 4/4. So yeah, from there, there's also this arpeggio, which again sounds like it's in 4/4 because instead of making it so each new note is being played after a beat, it's a beat and a quarter, or 1:1:06, and of course 4 beats and a quarter adds up to 5 beats, so then that adds up normally, but again that makes it sound like it's in 4/4. And here's a little bass under it as well. Actually, I haven't actually showed these. I think this was a Midnight preset. Yeah, this is in the lead section of GMS. I don't usually use presets, but obviously, as I said, this one was for Fortnite. And I have to admit, this is a preset I really like. I usually hate using presets, but this is a very nice preset. I think the arpeggio is also Midnight. Yes. I think they've got some slightly different master. Oh, no, they don't. Oh, this one's just a bit quieter. Besides that, they're the same. There is a little bit of mastering going on here, but I did kind of keep it light because again I was doing this for fun. Like I just put an OTT on the snare and an OTT on the kick for the drums. Oh, wait, do I use this piano anywhere? I don't think I do. Wait, hang on a minute. Apple keys. Track 5. Oh, right. Okay, so I would have changed this. Is that the bass? No, it's not. What is this? Oh, is this the... Oh, right. Sorry, I got kind of confused there, because I made this a bit ago, actually. This was something I was supposed to upload around the time I stopped uploading. Again, something we'll get into at the end of the video. So, some of it's kind of gone out of my head. Yeah, this is... So, there was originally supposed to be piano chords over the drop that were OTT'd and sounded very powerful, but in the end I swapped them out for this super saw. Preset was this. Oh, maybe it was just a fault. I think it is just... Oh no, auditorium doors in. Wait, really? I don't think I usually use this one. Yeah, that one. I don't think I usually use that. I'm surprised that's it. Oh, hey, there's a lot of stuff I forgot I did. I also use a stereo separator. That's something I haven't been doing until recently. Using more stereo separators. Basically, the plus-minus thing, if you put it towards minus, it sounds more like it's in the center of like the two ears. If you press like more to the plus, it feels like it's spread out between the full width of the two ears. And it's just very good in general to have sounds occupy separate spaces by putting them more towards the middle or more spread out. That just makes your track sound more coherent, so I've been using that to try and get away with cramming more stuff into the same place without it kind of clashing. So yeah. So the Midnight, wait, it's got a disperser on it? Is that right, or am I wrong? Oh no, that's not Midnight, that's... Ugh. Man, I'm getting confused. Right, that's the dubstep bit. It's because this track wasn't made in order. You know, I didn't start from the start. Right, okay. So this, which we'll get into the sound design of later. Yeah, disperser, OTT. Oh yeah, disperser. I just realised I don't think I've ever mentioned what this does on this channel. This is something that I've been using a lot more recently. When I first got this, I did not understand why I would ever use this. Because just by looking at it, it looked very much like it was basically just an equalizer, but with only a low shelf, or sorry, high shelf, instead of anything else. I thought this was like a frequency booster, and I'm like, why in the world would I ever want this instead of just an equalizer? Like, what? And I just kind of went past it because I've seen a lot of fancy little synthesizers that really just do something very basic or are very limited, but they have a nice presentation and they have a, you know, slashy name, and it's like, right, okay, it's another one of those. And I kind of just went past it. But I didn't realize is this something called an all-pass filter. And I must admit, out of all the things that I talk about, this is one of the things I know less about. But I'm pretty sure the idea is that this is not representing volume. This is representing that when you press down the note for, like, you know, this bass or whatever, when it starts being fed sound, it will actually delay certain frequencies and not delay other ones. And the idea is that this part where it peaks the most, frequencies around here will be the frequencies that play first, and then these ones over here, and then these ones down here. And at first I thought, okay, so that sounds a little bit more interesting, but like, I don't know, would I really be able to hear the difference? But overall, it's just one of those things that you slap on a bass and makes it sound good. It just makes it sound like it's like nice and girthy. It's got a nice impact. It just sounds good, like, quite simply. So I've been using it a lot on my basses recently. OTT, yeah, pretty simple. Oh yeah, this is actually a little bit of a weird wave shaper. I usually just curve it upwards and that's it, and I just change the amount I curve it upwards. With this one, I think I've curved it like this just because it was a little bit too compressed, and I wanted to have it to have a little bit of an almost kind of rest whenever it hit this kind of volume range. I think that's just why I did that. So yeah, that's not really what I was intending to talk about, but I because I wasn't going to talk about the mastering of that until I got into actually the bass itself, but I'm realising now that these are all out of order, these mixer tracks, so I'm kind of being forced to anyway. So 7 is unused. So whatever bass that was, or thing, I deleted it. The Midnights just have a convolver on it with the Smooth Cathedral preset on those settings. And the... I think that's the bass, track 9, yes. Equalizer. And convolver on default. So yeah, that's basically it. The only other mixer track is for this. I think it's just a massive convolver, I think that's it. Yep. Right. Okay, so now I'll get into the actual meat of things. So this bass, I guess we'll do this first. I actually do not remember exactly what this is, but I know it's citrus. So yeah, I start with a sine wave. And since... Okay, so just a minute, let me actually open a new thing. So, if you didn't know, I don't think it's worth me going over the entirety of how additive synthesizers work again, because I'm literally going to do this every single time I make a video, because I'm always using citrus, and as much as I don't like to start talking about things that I haven't explained in that video, like, there's a lot of places you can go find out how additive synthesis works, and I'm literally going to have to explain this every video, so yeah, I'm going to say I'm not going to explain it here. General idea is, though, that you can make any sound with a combination of sine waves with different volumes and different frequencies. So we're going to take the saw wave and we're going to convert it to sine harmonics, and you can see this is how a saw wave is made of sines. There's a certain mathematical equation, I obviously don't remember off the top of my head, for how much you decrease the volume by each time. But yeah, you have that kind of curve and you have every harmonic to make a saw wave. So what this was basically I wanted something like a low pass saw, but I didn't want to quite literally just low pass a saw, because that would sound too clean. I wanted this to sound a little bit... not aggressive. Why am I trying to say that? A little more, I don't know, human. There's a better word I can use for this, but basically I didn't want it to be perfect. I didn't want it to be mathematically perfect like this curve on purpose, because, well, I mean, it's not super emotional, but there's a bit of an emotional tinge to this kind of melody, and it didn't feel right to have this kind of perfect series of harmonics with perfect volume ratios. So I thought I would basically just mimic it, with this kind of weird thing that, you know, it's the same kind of thing, but obviously the curve is nowhere near as accurate, and obviously it falls down much quicker, because again, that's basically like low passing it. We're getting rid of the higher frequencies so that we emphasize more of the lower ones. So then we get this kind of shape, and then all I'm doing is ring modulating it with this shape. If you don't know what ring modulation is, I'll explain what it basically does, and then I'll explain what it actually does. What it basically does is it basically works like amplitude modulation. It sounds a lot the same. It basically makes it so it makes this sound look closer to the shape of this sound wave, but not exactly fit it to it. Now, the way it actually does this, though, is different from amplitude modulation. With amplitude modulation, I'm pretty sure what it basically does is it just checks if this part is higher than this part. Sorry, lower than this part, and if it is, it drags that down to this thing's height. Whereas with ring modulation, instead, what it actually does is, you know how I just mentioned that every sound can be made with a combination of sine waves? Well, it will take all the sine harmonics of both the original sound and the modulator, so the second wave here that is modulating, or modulating the first one, it will then find out what the sum and difference between those two frequencies is. So the sum being adding the two frequencies together, and the difference being taking the smaller one away from the bigger one. So if you had a 500 Hz sine wave and a 300 Hz sine wave, the sum would be 800 Hz and the difference would be 200 Hz. So we'd play a sine wave of 800 Hz and a sine wave of 200 Hz. Now I believe that it sounds so similar to amplitude modulation due to phase cancellation, but I don't know all the details. But that's what it does. More generally though, you should just kind of use it to kind of act as a way to kind of subtract from a sound, but in an interesting kind of way. So yeah, so we got this kind of shape, which is a bit of a squarey sort of shape, because I'm leaving out all the even harmonics except for 14. I don't remember if that's an accident or if I did that on purpose. I know it definitely looks like an accident, but I have some weird tendencies with harmonics. Sometimes I will choose a strange harmonic and like break a pattern on purpose. So, but it's really quiet, so actually there's a pretty good chance that that was just an accident. But whatever. This is a sine wave with those harmonics that has the tension turned up, so that it goes much more. If I turn the tension back down, it would be like that, but this kind of pushes it upwards. I think it was at 60 before. And then this skew would push the sine wave closer to the middle, so the peak would be more thin and more close to the middle. Yeah, I just like to use this a lot to make these, to be a bit more precise with these RM modulators, like, and how I want to shape them. Like if I take it away, it's just that, it's basically just a square wave, and I don't want literally a square wave. And then this kind of gets a bit more interesting. This would have been too aggressive. I do like to make shapes like this for dubstep basses, but like obviously this is a more relaxing bass. This isn't quite the crazy bass that, you know, we get later. I say crazy, more crazy bass that we get later. So yeah, and then finally it's going through this. Oh, sorry, I actually forgot to mention. You might notice that the frequency of the modulator is a little bit lower. That is because if the frequency of the carrier and the modulator are exactly the same, then you get a more boring kind of sound, because this part of this wave will always be modulating this part of this wave, because they're perfectly in sync. They're both going at the same speed. But if you change the pitch of one of them a bit, so we've made this one a bit lower, this one's going to go a little bit faster than this one, even though this one's so close to the right pitch, it's still not going to sound like super off or anything. Slowly, this will move backwards in relation to this wave, because this wave is moving forwards faster than it. So the part that I was just pointing at earlier would, instead of applying to where I'm pointing now, would start to apply here, then here, then here, and then as it goes back there, it would loop back around and here and here and here. And that way we have every single part of this wave affect every single part of this wave eventually, and which part affects which part depends on how long the note has been held for. So you get a lot more of an interesting timbre that way. So yeah, that is that bass. Then there's the actual dubstep bass itself. So yeah, this is a really simple but very effective bass right here. I actually do not remember all the details, but I like it. I love citrus, and this is why right here. Wait, that's the same thing I was just looking at. But again, because it's at the drop, I'm thinking it's from further back when it's not. It's towards the start. Huh. What am I looking at? Oh right, that's disabled. I was a bit confused here. I was like, why is this here? I think this is from a different idea I had a bit ago, and yeah, this isn't doing anything. What? And this is also turned. Oh right, okay. I was very confused. Oh right, yeah, because I thought that this one was turned on because this modulator had this orange bar to say that it is being affected by one of these, but it's not the envelope. It's modulation X. Right, okay. I was really confused for a second. Those are all turned off. All the stuff that I was just looking at. So yeah, they aren't doing anything. They were old ideas I got rid of. So yeah. All this is a sine wave being FM modulated by another wave, which is being RM modulated by another wave. So yeah, the modulation, as you can see, I've mapped the modulation to the mod X knob over here, and I'm alternating that. This is the wave that is acting as the FM modulator. It is a sine wave with a 7th harmonic and a 14th harmonic. So that means we have a sine wave that is the pitch of the note that we're playing, one that's 7 times the pitch of the note we're playing, and one that's 14 times the pitch of the note we're playing. And obviously the higher one is the loudest, so the one that is the pitch we're playing is the loudest. We also have the skew turned up really high. I usually wouldn't even turn it up this high. I just said a sine wave, actually. It's not quite a sine wave. Yeah, I forgot I messed with the shape thing. So when this shape is at 25%, it's a triangle wave, and you add triangle wave harmonics with this thing. When it's at 50, it's a saw wave, and you add saw wave harmonics. We're at 45 right now, which means we are, well, I'll visually show you over here. It's harmonics of this wave, I like to use this a bit just because it has a nice kind of sharp but not too aggressive sound to it. I think a saw wave sounds a bit too aggressive. But yeah, so, I actually forgotten exactly how this sounds, but you can try it out yourself. Because I'm literally so used to using this wave, but then just, like, messing around with the harmonics of it so it doesn't sound the same. But yeah, it's not too different from a side wave though. As you can see, the general shape is there. It's just obviously more pointy. Yeah, I've got the skew turned like way higher than I usually would, but I think there was a reason for that. I think I didn't like it lower. I'll turn it actually all the way down. Yeah, like that could be good for a different track, but that's like too aggressive for this one. I would just like to point out, it is so tragic you cannot automate this skew knob in Citrus. Seriously, you could make some seriously sick sounding stuff if you could automate this skew knob. You can't even go into Tools, Last Tweaked, and then automate it there. It doesn't do it. It's saying the last thing I tweaked was the beat length of the arpeggiator from all the way back at the start of the video. So it's not even acknowledging that I've touched this. I'm really sad about that. If you're wondering why I was on about this whole last tweak thing, if you didn't know, that's how you create automation clips for third-party synthesizers, where obviously you can't just right-click and click automation clip. You would turn a knob on there and then go on Tools, Last Tweaked, and you can automate it from there. Anyway, yeah, so there's sadly no way to automate this. I've actually been considering making, even though it would be really tedious for something I should be able to do quite easily, I've actually been considering making a Citrus bass where I just crossfade between different levels of skew of the same wave, just because I think that would sound really cool. Anyway, so yeah, this is what's FM modulating that. FM modulation will control the frequency of the carrier, so obviously when this thing is really high up, it will make it much higher pitched, and when it's really low down, it'll make it much lower pitched. But because this is oscillating so fast, you don't necessarily notice the individual parts where it goes higher pitched and the individual parts where it goes lower pitched. It more just makes it kind of more complex in timbre. But this would sound a little bit aggressive still if it weren't for this RM modulator, which is reducing the volume of this overall. If I get rid of the RM modulator, it sounds like this. And again, if you wanted a more metallic sound, then that would actually be fine. But, you know, that's not what I was going for here. In fact, how does this sound without the skew or the RM modulator? Probably very aggressive. I didn't expect that, you know? I actually could see myself using that for something. Oh yeah, disclaimer by the way, you should know this already if you're messing around with FM stuff in Citrus, but in case you didn't, you want to be playing very low notes. As you can see, I'm starting from C sharp 2. Because this produces very, very high notes. If I play C from middle C, that's the sound you get. Yeah, it's very high pitched. So here we have the RM modulator, which is honestly a little bit of a mess, but what we have here is the same shape. It's that part saw, part triangle thing. Tension turned up, the skew turned up. I actually don't usually mess with the sine shaper, but apparently I messed with the sine shaper here to make it... Oh yeah, because I wanted to, instead of just making it so that there's only these two smooth bits, I wanted to split those into 4. So I kind of use this to cut a little bit through the middle, where it's quite sharp, but still we got now 2 smooth bits on each side. So yeah, this is one of these waves with 1 harmonic and 25 harmonic. So if I turn that off, that's what it looks like. That's the wave we have, and then I made a copy of it that's 25 times the pitch. Yeah, I think that was about the volume it was at. That sounds about right. Yeah. Now, another thing that's a little bit weird about this is this over here. So, again, a reminder, because Citrus is kind of weird, I will admit this is one of the few things I don't like about it. They kind of deal with pitch in this way, where 2 on this frequency ratio thing is the normal pitch. and every time you halve it, you go down an octave, and every time you double it, you go up an octave. So 4 would be an octave up from 2. 5 is a weird kind of thing to put here. It's saying, hey, I want you to take the pitch that you were already asked to do, take it an octave up, and then take it another quarter of an octave up, which is definitely weird. But I've done it on purpose. I think actually that's, if I remember right, that is 3 notes exactly, I think. So, yeah, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think if I played C#2 like I do there, then this would be the pitch of D#, E3, I think. Basically, this would make this a very off-sync frequency, but I actually want that on purpose. Again, for the same reason where it will cause a more interesting kind of timbre. Usually you wouldn't go this wildly off of the correct pitch, just because it would make it sound too hard to make out the correct pitch. But luckily this isn't a modulator that's doing too much crazy. It's just slightly suppressing this thing, which is already, you know, a little bit suppressed by the skew, so it's not doing anything too crazy, which means that we can get away with a really, really weird pitch here without it destroying the sound. As well as that, just generally RM modulators, I think you can get away with it more. FM modulators, you can try it if you're going for something weird, but it would be if you want to just get a normal kind of FM bass, I wouldn't mess with things that aren't multiple factors of 2 with the frequency ratio thing. So yeah. But I very often like to do stuff like 1.5 and all that, and yeah, and here I've used 5. I think, actually, I remember now the reason why I picked 5 specifically is because with the harmonics here, I often like to use prime numbers that are odd. Which sounds strangely specific. The reason why that is because that if I use nothing but numbers that easily go into each other. If I use, like, I don't know, 2, 4, 12, 28 or something, I don't know, like stuff like that, it will not necessarily sound bad, but there won't be much conflict. It won't sound very aggressive. It will all sound very harmonious, which might be good for some kind of sounds, but obviously for dubstep, where there's usually a little bit more kind of crazy stuff going on, we'd like to have a little bit more depth in there. With these low kind of numbers that are all, they don't really go into certain amounts of other numbers, they create more interesting and weird frequency relationships at the cost of also being a little bit hard to make sound nice. So because of that, I am actually kind of limited. I usually use the 3rd harmonic, the 7th harmonic, and the 7th harmonic, and sometimes the 5th one. And I use multiples of those harmonics. That's kind of something I do to balance out the fact that I'm using something that doesn't fit very well into our 1st harmonic, is that I use multiples of that harmonic. So a very common thing that I would do is use 1, and then the 3rd harmonic, then the 7th harmonic, and then the 21st harmonic, because the 21st harmonic is 3 times 7. So although the 3rd and the 7th harmonic don't work as well with the 1st harmonic as much, they work very well with the 21st harmonic, and the other 3 all fit together. So that's like a kind of relationship I like to do a lot. I just want to point out this: if you don't do this, don't panic. Like, this is kind of strange specific stuff. It's just kind of a habit I do, but I do think it adds something to it. And I think this is something you want to keep in mind, although I think it's not strict rules. I think you can get away with being creative with it. Just kind of go by feel. But yeah, so the reason why I made it like this is because I noticed that I wasn't using the 5th harmonic very often, and I wanted to kind of shake things up by trying that a bit. And even though I knew that 5 on that thing wasn't like technically the 5th harmonic, it is me taking the normal pitch and multiplying it by 2.5, which is obviously half of 5. And as well as that, I thought, okay, right, then I'll put in the 25th harmonic, which is obviously 5 squared. So yeah, that's kind of the thought process that went behind that. Anyway, yeah, those are all the things. I don't think I had any. I think I planned to add unison, but then I listened to it and I actually didn't like it with unison. So yeah, and I've already showed you the mixer track. So that's actually almost everything except the notes themselves, which I'll get into a little bit later. I think the only other thing that's new... Oh wait, I don't think I technically showed you this. So, I think this is a copy of the Super Saw I already showed or I've just tweaked some things to make it less powerful, because obviously we want the big hits to be for these chords. Which, to be fair, I just realised I never really talked about this super saw. I'm sure most of you know how to make a super saw, but in case you don't, take a saw wave. Personally, I like to add a little bit of harmonisation to it with Harmor, but don't worry if you're not using Harmor, you don't need this. Add a bunch of unison and compress it, and ideally I'd actually also add a volume envelope like this. What else do I do on this one? Nothing else really. Yeah, that's about it. Oh yeah, and make sure that you've got a lot of unison phase with this thing, and a lot of pitch thickness, just because if you have the unison phase at a very low setting, all the different copies, the different unison voices will all clash with each other, and that can be good for some basses, but saw chords generally it kind of sound nice and harmonious. That's why we're using saw waves, because they're perfectly harmonious and all that. Like, we don't want to add too much kind of conflict into it, because it's with this kind of sound usually. So we like to space apart the voices more so that it doesn't sound like they're fighting against each other as much. So yeah, now we're there. So the actual notes themselves. This is not super complex in terms of music theory, but I'll just talk about it a little bit. So first of all, I start with these chords, which I do C sharp, E, G sharp. I am using the C sharp natural minor scale, the scale that I always use when I'm just doing stuff for fun. Like, this scale, this is really weird, because like, this is a strangely specific scale, but this is just the first scale I ever worked with, and so I'm very comfortable in it, even though most people would be like, what? Because it's just, I don't think it's a very common scale overall. But yeah, I just, like, it might seem weird, but just to me, like, I just instantly know, like, what notes I need, and I instantly know what will sound good in this kind of scale, so I'm more comfortable with it. But obviously, for most people, their first scale would be C major, since that's all the notes except the sharps, so it's easy to remember. But yeah, anyway, that's me getting onto a different track. C sharp, E, and G sharp. It's a very normal chord in this scale, very nice sounding. If you don't know what a triad is, then, oh boy, you probably should kind of learn a bit of music theory, but I'll tell you now. Basically, there's, when you work in a scale, a triad is a chord that uses the first, third, and fifth note in the scale, leaving out this note, which would be the fourth, and this note, which would be the second. And also, of course, the 6th and the 7th, but you know, that goes without saying. So yeah, you get this. Oh, and technically you wouldn't hear this note. I copied. You get that chord, right? This sounds mostly the same even without this note. It's mostly just because this note is just a copy of this note taken an octave up. There's a reason why I've done that, but I'll kind of get to that later. So then, just before I play this chord and then go back to the triad, this chord is just that I've knocked this up to be the 4th note and this up to be the 7th note. This is, so what a lot of kind of things people do with these kind of things to have a kind of development is they will play a suspended chord, which is the same as a triad, except you take this and you either make it the 4th note or the 2nd note. And that makes it sound like there's a little bit more conflict, because when notes are closer together in pitch in a chord, they kind of fight against each other more. You don't want to put them too close together, otherwise it will sound terrible, though. But then if you put them all far apart, then it doesn't sound very emotional. Anyway, so that's kind of what they would usually do. I've just done that, but then as well as that, I've also moved the top note up, and now the top note is technically one away from this note, even though, because of course the copy of it a scale up is very close. You may think, oh, it's a whole scale up, then shouldn't that not matter? It does matter. I think that's something I want to not go over in this video, because probably going to be more rambling, so yeah, I'll leave that out for now. But yeah, and the reason why I wanted to have this go to the note B here, Besides just being slightly less predictable, because I feel like it's very predictable to put a suspended chord there. As well as that, it's because I thought that after that I would probably want to do an E major triad, which, by the way, we're not technically an E major, but basically a natural minor uses the same notes as the major scale of the third note in that minor scale, which is a little bit weird to think about, but basically C sharp natural minor, E is the third note in that scale, and E major actually uses all the same notes as C sharp natural minor. The only reason that C sharp natural minor is C sharp natural minor and E major is that you start on C sharp in C sharp natural minor and you start on E in E major. And that's why this minor scale doesn't sound all horror and terrible. I actually really like natural minor scales because they don't sound 100% happy or sad. And I think that makes it a lot more easy to make things that sound emotional in a nice way without being melodramatic or basic. So yeah, since I knew that I probably wanted to do an E major chord here, since, you know, this would be a triad if I was in E major, so, you know, make it sound nice and happy. It's a nice kind of transition. I thought I should use the B note here, because then it makes it more natural when we repeat this, and the beat note is still here, but instead of there being a 2-note gap between each of these notes, there's now a 1-note gap. Almost sounds like we tried to do a step here and we're not sure of ourselves, and then we tried it again and now we're sure with ourselves and we're happy with it. Then we repeat that chord, but I wanted it to sound a little bit more kind of almost intensely happy, but also feel more true to the scale again, because of course we're in C sharp natural minor, not E minor. So what I did here is I moved the note to C sharp. Which is obviously one higher than B, and at first it's just like, oh, so you just move it one higher. But there's a reason why I did this as well, which is because the C sharp, we now have a chord of E, G sharp, C sharp. Now, this is the same chord as this, except we've now moved this C to here. So that's called an inverted chord. So now we're doing a C sharp minor chord again, but it's so close to this E major chord that we've done as well, and it's obviously us copying it but with just a bit more high pitch to it, that it sounds quite happy while still feeling like it fits with the original scale we started with. And then we just repeat this E major chord and go into this chord. Now, I actually just want to check, is this technically in another scale? It probably is. Yeah, okay. So this is an A major triad. But as well as that, it is also a chord that you would get from taking all the notes in a C sharp minor triad and moving them all 2 notes down the scale. So this kind of feels like it follows on well from this, because it uses all the same notes except this one, which gets moved to be 2 down from here. So it's like we just took all these and moved them 2 notes down in the scale. So that's why it sounds like, and of course we got an E and the C sharp both still match. So it sounds like a very natural kind of transition in this scale, and as well as that, it kind of matches. It kind of denotes a nice tone shift, because of course we're using signature notes from a different scale. Again, we're still technically in the C sharp minor, but we're using the signature notes from a different scale, so we're kind of evoking the feelings that that scale evokes. I will admit, this last one I didn't really have a plan for. This was just kind of mess around until it sounds right. The only thing I had in mind is I knew for this last one, I wanted something that sounded half complete. Because if I was going to end the track there, then obviously I wanted it to sound fully complete. But I don't. I want to repeat this thing over and over and over and over. Even though I want it to sound like, yeah, that's the end of this repeating thing. You know, I want it to sound half complete because of that. I want it to sound like that's the end of this tune, but it's not the end of the track. And it's just going to repeat over again. So I knew that what I wanted was to have something that had a little bit of kind of clashing going on with it, so that it sounded like it wasn't complete. So that is why we have an F sharp and an E so close to each other. And then the A is just here because we're copying it from here. I'm not going to lie, I just kind of messed around until it sounded good for this. Pardon me. Right, so the reason why I copied all the top note of each scale and moved each one up an octave for this is because I was just kind of experimenting. I'm not sure entirely when it comes to this thing if everything I'm about to say is right, but in my experience, whenever I've tried to make something emotional sounding in a scale, something like particularly kind of powerful sounding, while it's, you know, not necessarily like super loud or anything, it's usually, I usually do it when I make a melody that doesn't start from the first note in the scale. And I think that's just to do with the kind of feelings that using notes besides the first note in a scale is supposed to evoke. Because, like, you kind of get different feelings from the fifth and the fourth and the third and blah blah blah, and the different, like, you know, pitch relationships they have. I think that's kind of the general idea. So I think it sounds more emotional to make this quote-unquote melody. It's not a real kind of melody because it's just basically the same as the chords, but, you know, this kind of melody off of the fifth note in each scale because it just sounds a bit more emotional. You'll kind of hear what I mean. If I move this down to C sharp, I'm pretty sure. It still sounds fine, but it doesn't sound as emotional. I'm not sure about the third note. I'll actually try it out. Oh wait, is this... No, never mind. I was a little bit worried there because since that didn't sound right, I was like, wait, was what I just played you in the correct scale? But it is. That was all correct. This isn't. Just a moment. All these G's have become... those should be G sharps. Oh, and that should be a C sharp, I think. Actually, this should be an F sharp. And that should be an E. Right, there we go. There we go, we've got it now. You can kind of hear what I mean, like, this is definitely better, but it still sounds a little bit wrong to me. So I think, like, the third note sounds like it's emotional, but it also sounds a little bit wrong. The bottom notes always sounds like they sound right, but they don't sound very emotional. And then when we take these top notes instead, I think it sounds much more kind of emotional, as I say. So anyway, I kind of talked a little bit longer than I expected to about that, but there we go. There's almost nothing else to talk about with the notes really, because all the basses, all the arpeggios, they're just taking that chord. I think these basses just take the bottom note of each chord. Although I would just like to point out, this kind of shows what's going on here. It's like, actually, I will play the bit where the actual bass plays so you can hear the modulation as well. Makes it just sound nicer. Oh, I disabled bass. So this is all C minor, E major, A major. Now technically it's all C sharp minor because those are the notes I'm using, but like, you know, because I'm using signature note from those scales, as I mentioned before, it kind of takes on those emotions, so you can kind of hear the kind of tone shift. All these different things, they all just use those chords. It only gets different at the end here with these things which start to fade out at the end of the drop. So what's this here? We've added one more note to each of these, and this is the seventh. This is me making seventh chords. A seventh chord is not a chord with 7 notes, it's a chord with 4 notes. I know it's confusing, but technically a chord with 3 notes is a fifth. It's because the top note of a chord with 3 notes is a fifth, because like the top note of that chord would be a fifth note in the scale, and so a seventh chord, the top chord would be the 7th note in the scale. So for a C sharp minor, you would use the last note in the scale, which is B, alongside the C sharp, E, G sharp. which is why we've added a B here. It's also on a higher scale, but like, you know, that doesn't really affect much of the way it sounds harmonically. I mean, it does make a difference, but like, it's not a massive difference. It's basically not important for what I'm talking about right now. But yeah, this seventh chords are interesting. They tend to sound nice and emotional because no matter what, you've got to have notes close together now, because you have 7 possible notes and you're trying to make a 4-note chord, which means that no matter how you spread out the notes, one of the notes will be 1 note in the scale away from another one, which means that you can't avoid that kind of clashing you get when you put notes close together, because it's literally impossible not to put the two a little bit close together. And of course here it's the C sharp and the B, which shouldn't be this close, but they literally have to be because there's no other way we can do it. So yeah, because they are this close, it makes this sound even more emotional than it did before already. I think the reason why like I would do it like this is just because having this 5th note and a 7th note, it kind of harmonizes a little bit better. It makes it sound like there's a little bit less clashing, because since these are a higher pitch than the rest of this, it kind of makes you focus on this over this. And these two things is not a problem. These two fit together. It's this and this which don't fit together, but since they're so far apart, although you still hear the clashing, it's not as prevalent as it would be otherwise. Here the D sharp, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna say this is officially how this chord works. I just thought it made sense to put the D to say that the next chord on from this would be D sharp. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Now, there was one rule that I had that I wasn't breaking here, except at the end, where whatever I chose the 7th note to be, because although there's an official answer, that's a B, these other chords aren't necessarily, you know, perfectly normal chords and all that. So for those ones, you can see I mixed it up a bit and just kind of improvised and tried to see what sounded right. With this last one, though, I break my rule of having that 7th note be a note that's not already been played. And A is the bottom note here, and A is the top note here, and that's supposed to be the 7th note. But I've done this on purpose, because this chord already sounded a bit discordant because of these two F sharp and E being so close together. And also, it helps it sound more complete as it's coming towards the end of the thing to not add more clashing to that. So yeah, there's the whole music theory behind that. That feels like a bit of an abrupt end, but yeah, that's everything. So now I'm going to tell you why I haven't been uploading. Combination of things, but I guess I'll just shorten it down to the big things. Something kind of really bad happened, and yeah, I think I will just directly say it. When just after I uploaded the last video I uploaded, besides the Avium Omens trailer, the tutorial thing, and that was that my granddad had fallen very sick, and it was a bunch of things, but eventually he also got coronavirus, and that killed him, and that was obviously quite difficult for me. And I wasn't going to let it stop me from obviously moving on with my life at first. But then I also, just on top of that, like, that already kind of made it harder for me to feel motivated. And I was like, okay, I've got to come back and I'm going to work on my YouTube and all that. Not that YouTube is kind of my career plan or anything, but like, I really would like to have obviously a big YouTube channel and all that. And, you know, make it, quote unquote. But, and I felt like I could do it. I just had to be patient, and I just had to be consistent. And the reason why I hadn't done it is because I hadn't been consistent. You know, I just uploaded whenever, and I thought, yeah, I could upload like weekly or something like that. And I was trying to have kind of regular uploads then. I was trying to start making a good habit of that. But what I realized was that basically what happened was I came back and I actually recorded this video. I recorded this video on the 5/4 time signature thing, because that's when I made it. And I watched it back and I thought, I had some good points in there, but man, did I ramble. And I'm not saying I didn't ramble here, but I rambled way worse on that video. Like, I felt like I hadn't spent too long on that video, and it was way longer than I thought. And I thought, I'm not uploading this. There's too much of me just being aimless and not focusing and all that. I've got well, I could edit it down. It feels like a waste to record all that and not use it. But the thing is, you might notice I don't really do much editing. The main reason for that is because, well, in the past I couldn't find a free video editor that worked. I had to use Windows Movie Maker, which obviously no one wants to use. So yeah, I was just like, oh, I'll only edit if I absolutely have to. But then I got my hands on DaVinci Resolve, but then I realised, my god, my laptop cannot run DaVinci Resolve. And then I realised, wow, you know what, actually, come to think of it, my laptop's kind of 7 years old. It can't run anything. It's a miracle it runs FL Studio and OBS. I honestly don't understand how it pulls that off. But, I mean, I'm not complaining. But yeah, basically I do not have a video editing software that functions on this laptop except Movie Maker, which even then crashes often, lags a ridiculous amount, and is extremely limited. So, you know, it kind of feels like, what's the point in editing? But then as well as that, like this channel, I want it, and then this video is kind of a bit of a contradiction, but I thought I should put something out there. I wanted it to feel a bit more professional. I'm fine on my other channel with making videos where I don't seem professional at all, because I mean, it's not made to be a professional channel. But this one, like, I want to put my good stuff here. I want to put the stuff that I want to represent myself with here. And I thought these videos of me just rambling, although they could show my knowledge about sound design and all that, they're not going to be entertaining, they're not going to be good content, they're not going to create a good impression. I don't want to keep making videos like that, unless I can edit them down and improve them by editing them. And again, I can't do that. So I can only do that once I get a better computer, which is something I've been planning to do for so long now, and it should be happening soonish, but like, I feel like it's almost destined to go wrong somehow, because it feels like I can never have a good computer. But yeah, so that's kind of what held me back a lot. I actually had two things recorded, because as well as I was going to do a video basically praising Citrus, because Citrus is the best thing ever and you can't tell me otherwise. That video was also just ridiculously rambly, as I say. On the brighter side of things, though, of course, I have been working on Avian Omens all this time. It's been a little bit difficult, because, I mean, in my head I'm like, oh yeah, all this time with no school and all that, I'm going to be able to work on Avian Omens, I'm going to get so much done. Oh, it's going to be so good. And then, you know, like, I start trying to work on it constantly, and then I just keep sitting down at my computer and thinking, my god, my head is empty. Because I've tried to do nothing but this all the time, and to be honest, I feel bad even saying that, because it makes it out like I spent all the time working on music. I really haven't. It's just that, like, when I sit down to try and make music, and like, this was rarely a problem before, but now it's very often that I'll sit down, and I might spend just like half an hour just staring at FL Studio, just like not even starting to do anything, just thinking, ugh, how am I going to get out of this one? So yeah, it is getting along now, though. I mean, okay, so I was kind of hesitant to say this because I don't like to make promises I can't live up to, but you know what? Again, this video is already sounding a bit less serious than the other ones I'm doing, so I think you can kind of get that I'm not making any promises here. And of course, I don't have any rabid fans that will take things out of context and all that and take it to extremes, so you know, I don't have to worry about that. But basically, it was my goal to try. I really wanted to have Avian Omens done before I went to university in September. And it's not impossible, I'll say that. I could have it done by then, but it's looking like it probably won't happen. And I'm just saying that just because, like, in theory, if I didn't have this problem of just feeling like I'm just out of musical stuff, for Avian Omens, if I didn't have that problem, then honestly, I might be able to get the whole thing done within just in a week from now. But like, just the fact that I just feel like I've given everything I have, and now I have nothing left in me, but I still have more to do. Just that has kind of really held me back, and made it so it's going to take much longer. I will actually give some information on how they've progressed, though. I will tell you that Omen, the introductory track, is basically finished. I'm not gonna lie, it's been finished for a while. There's just some things that definitely need some fine tuning, and I've just desperately, like, I've been terribly, like, procrastinating on it. Like, I know that, like, it should only take, like, half an hour for me to finish it from here, which isn't very long at all. But, like, I just really don't want to do it. It's not going to be very fun at all. It's just going to be me fixing problems and not really doing anything creative. So it's something I've been trying to avoid, even though I don't want to be like that. I just, I couldn't bring myself to open up the file and work on it more. And I'll get more into that in a second. But yeah. So that's how Omen is right now. It should be done very quickly. It's just trying to get over that apathy. And to be fair, I almost half expect it'll be the last one that gets done, just because it'll be finished the whole time and I won't be bothered to go and actually fully finish it until it's literally the only thing left I have to do. But yeah, then there's Murder. Murder has been done for a long time. I actually finished Murder before I even moved to FL Studio 20. That one was the kind of thing that really sparked this EP. I was actually trying to not make this EP because I was working on a different EP that was a non-dubstep EP while when I had the idea for this EP, and I'm like, nah, I can't do it. I need to work on this. I've got one more track to do for this EP, and well, what do you know? Eventually, I realised that I was out of ideas for that EP and I should just start something new. And then I completely forgot about the EP, and then I've come back and I'm like, wow, it's been an entire year since I've last touched anything in that EP, and oh boy, I still only need one more track to finish it, and it's just sitting there. So that's another thing. I actually have another EP I've been sitting on that's basically fully finished, except just that one track I just haven't done. It's not as impressive as this one, so like, don't get too much. But yeah, it's a bit more casual, and it's, as I say, non-dubstep. I haven't really previewed it because it's just very volatile. With the non-dubstep stuff, I just have to wait for a spark of inspiration to hit, and then I'll do it all in like a day or two, and I'll finish an entire track. But like, that makes it actually worse. Even though I can do it very quickly, I have to just wait for the spark to appear, and then I can do it. And because of that, with the dubstep stuff, it's much more consistent. I can usually sit down and keep working on it and keep working on it, and even though it will go at a slower pace, at least I know it'll always be moving forward. Whereas, yeah, as I've already explained, this other EP, like, it's just been so stop-start, and now it's really stopped, because I just can't make a last track I'm happy with, and I don't want to release it until I have an ending track to it. So yeah. Anyway, I kind of got sidetracked there, but then there's Piteousness, which I must admit has actually gotten on pretty well. It's the full first half is done completely. Maybe I might edit the build up to the drop, because I must admit I don't like it that much, but to be fair, I really struggle to make build ups to drops that I like anyway. So as much as I hate to say this, I might just leave it alone, because I feel like it would just be a lot of work, and in the end I still probably won't be happy with it. So I mean, it's not terrible, it's just it could be better. So besides that though, the first half is entirely done. The kind of bridge between the first drop and the second drop is basically done. I just think it needs some finishing touches and all that. And the second drop, I'm not... the ending is completely done as well. The second drop, not completely sure. Just because of course, there's kind of two halves to the drop, as you heard in the preview. And I've added my edit to the first half of the drop. And I don't think it needs much work before that's finished. But then, when it transitions into the second half of the drop, it sounds really wrong. It sounds like they don't fit together on the second time round, and it's like, do I want to completely change the second half that I already have really all figured out? That's already like, I haven't touched it in ages, so I don't even remember all the notes and all that. And like, it's gonna be so much work for me to make an entirely new like second half to a drop. Am I really going to change all that just to make it sound better when it transitions? And it's like, honestly, I might, but then that's so much more time I have to spend working on it. But yeah, so that one's a little bit unsure, but if I don't decide to change the second half, then that one's very close to being done. Then there's Foul. Foul, again, that one's actually probably pretty close to being done. The second drop is basically done. It just needs a bit more variation and a bit more polish. And the end I want to slightly edit, but besides that, it's basically done. And there's a certain pad in there that I might mess around with. Besides that, foul is done. Eerie is the problem one right now, which is pretty funny because that one was one of the first ones I started on, and then I just didn't touch it for ages. I must admit, I kind of forgot it existed for a while, and I thought I was forgetting one. And then by the time I came back to it, I was like, oh wow, like, I felt like I was doing okay with this one, but now I'm just realising all the other ones are into their second drops, and this one, I only have half of a first drop. I don't even have an intro, I just have half of a first drop. So I've been working on that one. That one's the one that's going to make it so that I probably can't get it done before I go to university. Because I didn't even have an intro. I made an intro. I didn't even have a second half of the first drop. I've made that now. But here's the thing. The intro sounds empty to me, and it sounds wrong, but then I don't know what to do with it, because parts of it sound really good. I'm going to have to massively restructure it and all that to make it sound really good to me, or I'm going to have to find ways to overcome the reasons why it sounds empty, but then I don't know how I'm going to do that. Like, maybe I just throw the entire intro out the window and make an entirely new one, but then that's even more time, Second drop, like, it's just, again, that's the whole second half of the track needs doing. That's a lot of work. But at least, and then finally there's Unkindness, which is definitely a weird one. Usually the drops are the hard parts, and yet with Unkindness, I've actually done both the first and the second drop, and the only thing that needs to be changed is there is a certain synth in the second half of the second drop that doesn't sound quite right to me, that I'm going to need to compress a bit more and, make it sound a little bit better. And I also might want to mess with the snares, because the snares are really, really bad. I really hope I don't have to do them from the ground up, because of course, again, that's more time, but I'll mess with the snares. But besides that, the first and second drops are done. The weird thing is, I actually can't make an intro that sounds right to me. I've made like 5 different intros and they all sound wrong to me, and I always restart and I just think, no, that's not right. But once I get one that sounds right, that one should be pretty quick to finish. So yeah, that's the progress of all of them. One of the reasons as well that this has been taking a while, besides just the fact that obviously there's a lot of work to do, is that, well, again, this laptop, it's not made for this stuff. It's really old. It's a miracle it can even run FL Studio. I am constantly working at ridiculously high CPU loads. I can't hear anything I'm listening to. I just have to keep exporting stuff. It's so slow. And that wouldn't matter if I wasn't trying to do so much. And that really makes it almost unfeasible to do this kind of stuff. So that's why I'm dying for a new computer. But yeah, that is also why these tracks get almost finished and then they just kind of sit there. It's because once I've done the first drop, usually both halves of the first drop, once that is done, it should be easy, because I've done the hard part. But actually the hard part is to come. The hard part is dealing with the fact that from now on, I put so much into FL Studio to make those drops that FL Studio is going to be constantly dying as I work on the rest of it. The entire time, almost every single time I make a second drop, it's just like, well, I would like to put more effort into it, but I literally can't hear what I'm doing. So I can only make so much. Because it's always been a pet peeve of mine, is like dubstep tracks where they make the second drop the exact same as the first drop, or exactly the same but with a different drum beat, but basically the same. So I always try and make a different second drop, no matter what. But some of them, like, they're not that different, and it's not because I don't want to make a different second drop or because I think it's better to have them be similar. It's literally just because it's not feasible for me to make it as different as I want to make it on this machine. It's just not going to happen. Not unless I spend a ridiculous amount of time working on it. I suppose the last thing as well is that I really want to up my game with this EP. I really want this to sound professional while still being in my style. I still want it to... I think... Okay, so here's the thing. The other 2 EPs I did, Technology EP and the Paracosm EP. The Technology EP is alright, but it definitely has signs of amateurness and just badness in there. And there's a couple things I regret about some of the tracks. The Paracosm EP has a couple shimmers of goodness in there, but
honestly, a decent amount of it is trash. With this EP, now that I know I can do it, I'm trying to make it sound, professional as I say, but the problem is I have to be consistent, which I didn't think would be so much of a problem before, but obviously now that I'm doing it, I'm realizing how difficult it is to be consistent. Because with the, Paragosm EP, I made Totems, that was a really good one for the skill level I was at that time, and I made Thingy, Knights, which they're not even that one really. I was kind of about to say that one was really good for my skill level at that time, but I'm not even sure about that. But then, as well as that, you had the intro track, which wasn't terrible, but it wasn't very detailed, and it was poorly mastered and all that. And then you had Spirits, which is an absolute train wreck. There's just tracks in there that weren't good, but I put in anyway just because they were made for the EP, and I want to have a full EP, so I'm going to chuck them in there anyway. And now I have to make a full 6-track EP where I can't just chuck in a track that I wanted to go in the EP, but then I'm realizing it doesn't sound that good, and just go, oh well, I went through the trouble of making it, I'll throw it in there anyway. I can't say that now. I've got to make sure that if the track does not sound good to me, it doesn't go in the EP. It's got to sound real. They all have to sound good. And to be fair, I almost kind of set myself up for this. This is supposed to be a 5-track EP, but then I had the idea for Omen, and I was like, it'll just be a short introductory track, like I did with both the Paragosm EP and the Technology EP, and that was the idea as well. That it was going to be a short intro track. And then it kind of accidentally became a 3-minute long track, which, while not super long, is basically full length. So, yeah. Again, kind of set myself up for that one. But, yeah. At the very least, it's coming along. I know this last bit has been long, but this is stuff that I've wanted to say. And I suppose one other thing that, I can't make any promises, but one other thing I will say is that you will kind of get a bit of a hint for when I think I can get it ready. The reason for that is, as I mentioned before, I want to start uploading regularly, because of course if you upload regularly, then it's more likely than people will find your videos, and YouTube will, be favourable to your channel and recommend you to people if you upload regularly. So, what I might do is, I want to get a bit of a head start. When I upload the Avian Omens EP, I want to not just have it so that there's radio silence on my channel until suddenly it drops. I want it to be that before it uploads, there are a string of uploads before it of, less big videos obviously, but, stuff like this video that you just watched now, maybe a bit more professional, I don't know. But yeah, I would want to do something like that. I would want to, sorry, again, I'd cut that out with my editing, but it's going to take way too long, and it's probably going to crash 3 times or something. Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry, my brain just went blank. Ugh, I'm kind of embarrassed leaving this in, but again, I've gotten this far. I don't want to discard this whole video just because I've stammered here, and I don't want to have to deal with Movie Maker for 5 hours just to cut out this one part. I was saying about... Yeah, so yeah, there's going to be more videos like this. Again, hopefully a bit better than this. Being uploaded probably once a week up until it gets uploaded. So I'll probably, once I know that it shouldn't take very long for me to get it finished entirely, I'll start uploading once a week. Hey, maybe if I have more in mind than I thought, by that point it might be once every couple days or something. And then after a few uploads, hopefully it'll drop. And yeah, you'll have them all. Also, that's actually something that I'm surprised I haven't mentioned. I actually have a bit of a plan that I just realised I haven't really shared with anyone yet. Which is, as a decent amount of you know, I started out on Newgrounds because I only started making music because I wanted to use it on Geometry Dash levels. And now I've kind of shifted away from that. I mean, I still was uploading my music to Newgrounds, but I didn't make it with the purpose in mind of using it in Geometry Dash levels. And as much as I like Geometry Dash and all that, I don't see myself really coming back to it in any major way until 2.2 comes out, which seems like never at this rate. But because of all that, and because of the fact that I also seriously want to try and pursue this as a career now, and sadly when I do put this music on Newgrounds, of course, that means it's all free, and, just so you know, I'm not going to be charging people for the music or anything, don't worry. This is something that I plan far for the future, really. But at least if they watch my YouTube videos, if I take off, I could get ad revenue out of that. That's something. So basically, what I'm getting at is I'm thinking that I will stop uploading to Newgrounds eventually. Not entirely, but I won't upload major tracks there. If I do something for fun and I think it sounds actually pretty decent, I might upload it to Newgrounds and just leave it as a free thing. But overall, I think I will generally start uploading to Newgrounds far less. But what I will do is, for this EP, I will upload every track of this EP to Newgrounds and have it available on Geometry Dash. In fact, I think I'm going to create an entirely separate account on Newgrounds with actually my name, Technocosm, and I'm going to start putting all my stuff on there. Separate it from my old account because, of course, while it's not like it's all trash on there, of course, there's a lot of my older stuff on there. Also, I kind of want to separate myself from the kid who made How to Nine Circles, and everyone knows the kid who made How to Nine Circles as Double Chin Doge 7. I don't want to have it on the Double Chin Doge 7 account. So yeah, but yeah, I will upload every track of this EP to Newgrounds, and I really hope I get to see some decent levels using that music. I actually think that now that it sounds the way it does, you could make some pretty good levels with this music. I think the music from before that I made, you couldn't really use it for very good Geometry Dash levels for the most part. Dubstep, actually, I was surprised. That was a bit of a popular one. I'd never got done. I don't really know what happened to it, and to be fair, in the first place, I was skeptical it would ever happen. But I did actually get invited to a mega collab using that track. They knew that they know that I'd made the track, and they invited me to make a mega collab. The reason why I knew this was kind of never going to happen was because they were saying they were going to make it the hardest level ever, and I'm like, do you know how many other people are going to try to make a mega collab that's the hardest level ever? You're never going to verify it, or it's not going to be the hardest level ever. So yeah, but I didn't say that, and they were being nice, so I thought, yeah, sure, I'll join in anyway, because at this point we weren't doing decoration, we were just doing gameplay. So I made a really ruthless timing gameplay part near the end of the song. But yeah, that was using Dubstep. I actually should show you that sometime, because I feel like although it's absolutely evil, I think I had some pretty funny ideas for that little bit. And honestly, that's kind of surreal to me that happened still. Like, I'm really curious what happened to that collab. I have a feeling that probably what happened was just that they made the full gameplay for it, but then they realized that no one can verify it or something like that. But I'm kind of interested what happened to that. Oh boy. I'm gonna have to title this video differently. At first, I was literally just gonna call it "How I Made a Dubstep Beat in 5/4 time signature," or something like that. But now I might have to kind of add a slash on the end to say, also rambling about the channel at the end of the video. God, I hope you can't hear that. I don't know who the hell that is outside. Well, anyway, you probably did. Anyway, there was one more thing I was going to say, damn it. Yeah, so all the tracks from this EP will go on Newgrounds, and they'll be available on Geometry Dash on the new Technocosm account. What I might do as well, I really don't want to do this, because I really like the idea of dropping the whole EP at once and it being like, oh my god, it's ready, it's out, it's ready. But since Murder is completely done, I do kind of like the idea of just releasing Murder a little bit early, and none of the other ones, just Murder, a little bit early on the Newgrounds account. Actually, there's no point to that. I was about to say I was going to do that just so that if anyone did want to make a Geometry Dash level with that song, and because I might try making one myself, maybe, I might upload it to Newgrounds. But then the problem is, I want it on my new account, but then if I make a new account, I would need to make at least 4 tracks to get scouted. And of course, if I upload just that one track, I'm not going to get scouted, even if it is really good. So, yeah, I suppose that won't work, but I don't know, maybe I could upload 3 little kind of mini tracks that just I've had in the background and then get scout. I could do it. I'll make a video if that happens. But then I'm not sure if I want to do that, because again, I really like the idea of it being a big thing, like the day it happens, it all suddenly just, it's all out, I don't know, it makes it a bit more hype. So anyway, I guess the last thing I want to say is, even though this was not what I was planning to say last, is because it kind of jumps around topics a bit. But um, another reason why I kind of really want to not do these videos if I can't edit them is it might sound a little bit kind of vain and all that, but like I think you know that I don't mean it in that way. I want this to be a channel where you see that I upload and you're actually excited. You know, it's not like, oh boy, it's that guy who fills my sub box with random trash every 5 minutes again, you know. Like, you only watch him for one thing and he hardly ever does that thing, and then, like, you know, he makes 100 videos on something you don't care about. I don't want to be that kind of channel. I want to be a channel where, like, I might not upload as frequently, but when I upload, it's exciting for you, so yeah, that's another reason why I don't really like the idea of doing too many of these videos where I'm just kind of unscripted, unedited, just talk about this stuff. But then again, like, what other YouTube content can I make? I'd love to make, you know, better content, but I'm not an artist. I could make a little bit of visuals in Paint, but, like, not many. But, actually, I will mention one thing on the other channel. This is kind of a little bit off topic, because it's not this channel, it's the you know, casual channel. On Double Chin Doge 7, I have been thinking of making a COD Zombies tier list video. I say thinking, I've actually recorded all the audio for it, but I'm just thinking, do I go ahead with it? Just because, like, although I have done all that, it's a lot of editing, and then on top of that, what are the visuals going to be? Am I just going to steal someone's gameplay? I kind of feel like I might just literally just draw a stick man, and then just have, like, a little picture of the map next to it. I honestly, you know what, I might do that because I it would still take a bit to edit together, but you know, I could realistically do that. Oh boy, yeah. So this has been a real ramble, but like I suppose it's been good for me to get this all off my chest. Yeah. I still feel like there's something else I was going to say. I'm horrible for this in real life too, but nah, I don't think it would be that important. So I guess all I'm going to say is, what I will say is, even if I don't get this done before I go to university in September, that is around the time I should be getting a much better computer, and then that should speed things up a lot. And even if I don't have it out shortly after I get the new computer, I should be able to make much better YouTube content, because then I should be able to actually use a decent quality editor without my, you know, computer crashing constantly. So that's also a plus. I also can't wait to move on to other things. I have actually been thinking of making a video recently as well. I guess I'll leave this as the ending note, as I could ask this as a question. Would you be interested in a video of me showing a bunch of scrapped and crashed projects that were finished enough that they're interesting, but, like, you know, obviously they never got finished? Because if they were finished, I'd already uploaded them on here. Because there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And I will actually throw in there that for any of you that came because you know my Battle for Bikini Bottom remix, the dubstep remix of Industrial Park, Robo Patrick's theme, I did actually start making one for the Chum Bucket Lab Robot SpongeBob theme as well, but that one crashed. But I could show you what was left of that before it crashed if you wanted in that video. But yeah, I guess that'll be what I asked for you as the kind of last thing before I end this video. I'm sorry for the length of this, but if any of you actually watched this all the way through, then thanks, and thanks for being understanding for, you know, it's going to take a while for me to get this all done, but I think the majority of it is over. If I'm going to give my estimate, I feel like this will probably be done by halfway through September. It's kind of difficult though, because, like, as I say, technically I'm so close. If you take the lag out of the equation and the burnout out of the equation, literally could probably do it in a week. But those two things combined really hold it back. Because again, technically I do not have much left to do. Eerie is the only one where there's a lot left to do. All the hard parts in every track except Eerie have been done, and even in Eerie, like, the hard parts are the parts that have been done more than the easy parts. Anyway, I need to stop this video before I ramble even longer, so thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Did it actually